Welcome back to the Motivated Mind Zone. Glad to have you here. We are launching into a deep dive today, um, tackling something that causes, well, a lot of frustration for millions of people out there. How do those really fluent English speakers get that effortless, natural flow? You know, if you've spent ages, years maybe, with grammar books, only to completely freeze up when someone asks you something simple, this deep dive is definitely for you.
Oh, that feeling is so common. Countless learners feel stuck. They start believing fluency needs some kind of, I don't know, special talent. Or maybe just endless intensive study.
Or moving abroad, right. That's
Yeah,
the big one people think is the only way.
exactly. The big investment. But our sources, the material we've looked at, it really cuts through all that. It simplifies things, actually.
So we're going to sort of unpack the actual methods, the
Yeah.
specific practical things, the habits, the mindset shifts that help turn English from this, school
Yeah,
subject
something you have to do.
into something that's just part of your life, a living, breathing thing. It's like a shortcut, maybe, to understanding the how of fluency, not just admiring the result from afar.
Precisely. And the core idea, the foundational thing that comes through from all the material is this. Fluency isn't some, magic level you suddenly hit after X thousand
Right.
hours.
It's not like a video game level up.
Not at all. It's much better defined as a set of habits and attitudes. And the key part, anyone, literally anyone at any level can start developing these today.
I really like that way of putting it. It makes fluency feel less like this mountain peak you might never reach
Hmm.
and more like a path you can actually start walking down right now. It's about getting past just, memorizing lists of words or forcing yourself through long, frankly, boring study sessions.
And instead,
Instead, it's about making English part of your everyday life. That's the phrase that stuck with me. It's like the
gotcha.
learning almost becomes,
Yeah, figurable.
right, because it's just happening.
And that's exactly what we're aiming for in this deep dive. We're going to carefully unpack this whole process. Think of it in maybe 4 stages. We'll kick off with the mindset that shift has to come first.
Okay.
Then we'll dig into the small, smart daily actions, the things that add up over time.
The consistency piece.
Yep. Then we'll analyze the actual speaking techniques, what makes communication sound natural and confident. And then finally, we'll look at resilience, how fluent speakers handle mistakes and stay motivated for the long haul.
And the best part, based on what we've seen, is that everything we're talking about today is something you can actually do. You don't need to buy a new course or book a flight.
No, it's about changing how you engage with the English you probably already have some knowledge of. The whole path just feels clearer and honestly much less scary once you see fluency is built brick by brick with daily choices and just showing up.
Okay, sounds like a plan. Where do we start?
Let's dive right in. It all begins in the mind.
Okay, let's unpack this. The
Mm.
first really critical piece, the mindset. The shift in thinking that, according to our sources, absolutely has to happen before the skills really take root. They're quite emphatic about it. Before fluency shows up in your words, it starts really fundamentally in your thoughts.
Yeah, this is probably the most transformative idea we found because it gets right to the heart of the learner's emotional relationship with English. Fluent speakers, the ones who seem natural, they just view English completely differently from those who, struggle and feel stuck.
How so? What's the difference?
Well, they don't see English primarily as a school subject, something they have to study, packed with complex rules they need to memorize perfectly, or else.
Or else they've failed the test somehow.
Exactly,
Okay.
that pressure. No, instead, they've managed to reframe it. They see English as a tool, a really useful tool to explore the world,
Okay, a tool for what?
a tool to connect with people, maybe people online or when traveling, a tool to access new ideas like, reading articles or watching documentaries that aren't available in their native language, a way to engage more deeply with things they already care about.
Ah, okay, so it's connecting English to their existing interests.
Precisely. And that shift in perspective, It's psychologically massive. It completely changes the emotional weight. Think about the motivation difference. The person stuck in the subject mindset says, ugh, I need to study English for an hour tonight.
Yeah, that feels like homework. Heavy.
Huh?
Like pressure.
Totally. But the person with the fluent mindset, they're thinking, oh, I want to use English to watch that cool tech review on YouTube, or I want to use English to understand the lyrics of this new song I like.
That instantly flips it, doesn't it?
Yeah.
The pressure disappears and it becomes, well, motivation, genuine interest. When English becomes the key that unlocks something you want, information, entertainment, connection, it stops being this thing you have to fight with.
Right. And if we look a bit deeper psychologically, this ties into what's sometimes called low-stakes learning. When you're, say, reading about your favorite football team in English because you love football.
Your brain is focused on the game, the players.
Exactly. Your focus is on the content, not consciously on analyzing the grammar of every sentence. The language becomes the vehicle, not the destination itself. And this focus kind of bypasses that mental resistance, that friction that often comes with purely academic study, which incidentally leads to much better retention of the language too.
Okay, but let me push back on that slightly. Say I get home, I'm tired after work. How do I summon the energy to think I want to use English instead of just defaulting to, ugh, I have to study? Doesn't that reframing still take effort?
It does, especially at the beginning. But the key strategy the sources point to is integrating English into routines you already have, where the main goal is actually enjoyment or necessity, not study. Start small.
Like what? Give me an example.
Okay, say you always scroll through social media before bed. Just change the language setting on your phone or that specific app to English. You're already motivated to check your phone, right?
Yeah, unfortunately.
So English just becomes the unavoidable wrapper for something you were going to do anyway. Or if you always listen to music on your commute, maybe swap one playlist for an English podcast about a hobby you're really into, gardening, cooking, video games, whatever. The enjoyment of the hobby pulls language learning along with it.
So the motivation isn't really for the English itself, initially at least.
Yeah.
It's for the thing English gives you access to. That makes a lot of sense.
It's a powerful shift. Now, the second really big piece of the fluent mindset is this idea of action over perfection. So many learners set this impossibly high internal bar. They're waiting
I
for
know.
some magical moment when they feel perfectly ready before they dare to speak or really engage.
And the fluent folks, they get that it's the other way around, right? You
Okay.
become ready by doing it, by speaking.
Exactly. You don't wait until you feel perfect because that day never comes. You speak now, even with the mistakes you know you're going to make.
It's like that swimming analogy that kept popping up in the sources, isn't it?
It is. You can read a dozen books about swimming, you can watch videos, study fluid dynamics, practice the arm movements on your sofa.
But eventually.
Eventually, you just have to jump in the water. Reading about it, thinking about it, it's not enough to actually feel the water, feel the flow.
And fluent people aren't afraid to get wet, so to speak. They expect to splash around a bit, make some waves, and crucially, they don't see those splashes, the mistakes, as like personal failures.
No, or as proof that they're just bad at English. That's the critical difference. They see mistakes purely as data points, feedback.
Okay, explain that. How does that work in their head?
So when they make an error, the internal voice isn't, oh no, I'm so stupid. It's more like, huh, my past tense was wrong in that sentence. Okay, need to review irregular verbs. Or maybe, the person I was talking to looked confused by that phrase. Maybe that expression isn't common, or I pronounced it weirdly.
So they're diagnosing the issue, not judging themselves, depersonalizing the error.
Exactly. Treating it as useful feedback for the next attempt. And that is what keeps their confidence from shattering. Because confidence and fluency, they're deeply linked. They feed each other.
How so?
Well, the more you speak, even with errors, the more data you gather on what works and what doesn't. The more data you have, the more corrections you make, the more confident you feel about trying again. The more confident you feel, the more you speak, the more fluent you become. It's a positive cycle.
But if fear of mistakes stops you from speaking in the first place,
Then the whole cycle grinds to a halt. Confidence stalls, fluency stalls instantly.
which ties right into the third part of this mindset piece, doesn't it? The long view and finding joy. Because if every little mistake feels like a catastrophe,
You'll burn out incredibly fast. You'll just quit. Fluent people, or those on the path to fluency, they tend to view it as a journey, a lifelong process, really, not some short term project with a strict deadline. And that perspective encourages patience with themselves.
they get that progress isn't always linear. Some weeks you feel like you're flying, others you feel stuck.
Right. And instead of constantly beating themselves up because they don't sound like a native speaker yet, they learn to notice and celebrate the small functional wins along the way.
And what do those small wins look like specifically? Because sometimes progress feels invisible day to day.
Totally. It could be things like understanding a really key plot point in a movie without needing subtitles for the first time, or having a short, spontaneous chat with a barista and realizing afterwards you didn't translate anything in your head.
Or maybe finally getting a tricky idiom or understanding a joke someone made in English.
Yes, those moments are golden. They provide real, tangible proof that you are moving forward. Progress isn't just about grammar scores. It's built on these little moments of successful communication. Small wins add up.
And crucially, they seem to avoid comparing themselves to others, which is so easy to do online.
Oh, absolutely. Comparison is toxic for motivation,
Hmm.
especially comparing yourself to someone who's been learning for 10 years longer or to a native speaker. It's just paralyzing. Instead, the sources suggest they use healthy self comparison.
Mm.
They consciously think back, how was my English last month or 6 months ago? They compare themselves today to their past self.
That makes sense because the day-to-day changes are often tiny, almost imperceptible, but looking back over a few months.
Exactly. The improvement often hits you quite powerfully. Maybe record yourself speaking for a minute today. Don't listen back immediately. Wait 6 weeks, then listen. You'll likely be surprised. That self comparison builds real pride and keeps the momentum going.
And the final element of the mindset, finding joy.
Yes, practice just can't feel like punishment long term. Fluent speakers actively integrate English into things they genuinely enjoy anyway. Watching movies they love, listening to music they love, reading about hobbies, sports, travel, fashion, cooking, whatever it is.
Because you can only really stick with something for the long haul if you find some pleasure in the process itself.
Precisely. So, fluency isn't necessarily about working harder in the sense of more hours of painful study. It's often about working smarter by strategically weaving English into the enjoyable parts of your life.
Okay, so the foundation is set. English as a tool, mistakes as feedback, learning as a patient, enjoyable journey.
Yeah.
Once that mental shift starts happening, what comes next? The practical stuff.
Exactly. This is where it gets really interesting because we move from the why and the how to think to the what to actually do. Once the mindset is shifting, what are those small daily actions that build up into that natural fluency? Because the sources are crystal clear on this.
Let me guess. Consistency over intensity.
You nailed it. We simply cannot overstate this point. Fluency is the outcome of compounding small daily actions, not massive, infrequent cramming sessions. Neurologically, our brains just learn better with spaced repetition, with regular exposure, trying to absorb, say, 10 hours of English in one go on a Saturday.
It's exhausting, first of all.
Totally exhausting. And the returns diminish rapidly. Your brain gets overloaded.
So the specific metric that came up, like 5 or 10 minutes a day, is that really better than a big chunk once a week?
Vastly superior, according to the research. 5 or 10 minutes of focused, active engagement daily sends a signal to your brain, hey, this language is important, pay attention to it regularly. It keeps it active. 10 hours once a week. The brain might treat it like a temporary anomaly.
For fluent people, they become masters at finding these little pockets of time, right? These micro moments.
Yes, they don't necessarily need to block out 2 hours for English study. They get really good at using the inevitable dead time in their day.
Okay, give us some concrete examples. What does a micro moment look like in practice for someone listening?
Sure. Think about the 5 minutes you're waiting for the kettle to boil or the coffee machine to finish in the morning. Instead of just staring into space, quickly read a short English news headline on your phone or an English meme. Simple.
Okay. What else?
The few minutes you're waiting for a bus or a train, instead of scrolling mindlessly, switch your music cue to a short clip from an English podcast you like.
While you're cooking dinner.
Maybe stick little labels on things in your kitchen in English: kettle, microwave, sugar, salt. You'll passively see and engage with those words every single day without extra effort. These tiny intentional acts keep the language engine warm, so to speak.
And that engine needs fuel, right? Input,
Yeah.
which starts with listening.
Absolutely. Fluent people make a point of listening to some English every single day. Could be a short podcast episode, a 5 minute YouTube clip, a song. It doesn't have to be long or intensely academic.
The goal isn't always 100% understanding, though, especially at first.
Not necessarily. The primary goal is just to keep your ears tuned in. Keep your brain familiar with the sounds, the rhythm, the intonation of English. The sources used a great analogy. It's like keeping your muscles warm if you only listen occasionally.
Your brain almost has to recalibrate each time, like, oh yeah, that language.
Exactly. It feels foreign again. But that constant low stakes daily connection, it reinforces English as just a normal part of your soundscape. It keeps it present.
Okay, listening daily. What other habits?
Building on that, one of the most powerful internal habits the sources highlighted is thinking aloud, or what's often called self-talk in English. This is huge because it requires no partner, no audience. It happens entirely inside your head, or maybe whispered quietly when you're alone.
Why is that so powerful? It sounds a bit strange talking to yourself.
It might feel strange at first, but it's a game changer because it directly tackles the biggest mental hurdle for most learners: translation. That constant switching back and forth in your head.
Ah, okay, so walk me through an example. How would someone use self-talk?
Right. Imagine you're just making breakfast. Instead of thinking in your native language, where's the sugar? Need to stir the coffee.
Mm,
You consciously articulate those thoughts and actions in English internally. It's like,
okay.
okay, first, gotta find the sugar. Where did I put it? Top cupboard. Right. Now, pour the hot water carefully. Ooh, this coffee smells good today. Did I remember to buy milk? Hope so.
So you're narrating your immediate reality, your actions, maybe your feelings or brief plans.
Precisely. And the critical outcome, the reason this works so well, is that it forces you to start thinking directly in English. You begin to bypass that laborious mental step of formulating the thought in your native language and then translating it.
Which is what slows so many people down in conversation.
Absolutely. When English starts becoming the language of your internal monologue, not just the language of your textbook exercises, that's when true automatic fluency really begins to kick in.
That directly tackles that feeling of, I know the word, but I can't find it quickly enough when I'm speaking. Because self-talk is like real-time rehearsal in functional contexts.
Exactly. Now, moving from internal thoughts to actually producing sounds, another key daily habit is what the research calls mastering the flow. And this involves two related things: chunking and imitation. Fluent speakers aren't just learning isolated words like looking up apple in a dictionary.
They're learning and using bigger pieces of language, right? These chunks.
Yes. They repeat and actively imitate natural expressions, the rhythm, the tone, whole prepackaged chunks of language that native speakers use without thinking.
Can we get more specific? What exactly counts as a chunk?
Sure, a chunk isn't just a single word. It could be a common pairing of words, a collocation like heavy rain or make progress. It could be a social formula like how's it going or a nice to meet you. It could be a phrasal verb unit like look forward to or run out of, or even discourse markers like to be honest or on the other hand,
So instead of painfully building a sentence word by painful word,
which is slow, mentally taxing, and prone to errors.
they just pull a ready-made chunk from their memory that expresses the whole idea or function.
Correct. They learn to copy and internalize these patterns, maybe longer ones too, like, oh, if I had to guess, or that's not really my cup of tea. When they need that idea, the whole chunk just rolls off the tongue more easily. It also trains the mouth, the muscle memory.
And this is where that daily habit of imitation becomes so important. You're training your mouth to make the sounds and rhythms.
Exactly. The sources kept mentioning one technique over and over: shadowing.
Shadowing. Okay, what is that?
It sounds simple, almost deceptively so, but it's incredibly effective. It means you listen to a short piece of audio, maybe a bit of a podcast, a line from a movie, and you try to repeat what you hear immediately after the speaker, like an echo or a shadow.
So you're not waiting for them to finish the sentence. You're talking almost at the same time.
Pretty much, yeah, or just a split second behind. And crucially, you're trying to match not just the words, but their speed, their intonation, the rises and falls, the emphasis.
Like mimicking a parrot almost,
Mhm.
but focusing on the sound, not necessarily deep comprehension at that exact moment.
That's a good way to put it. You're training the music of the language, the cadence, the connected speech where words blend together. This exercise hits the mouth muscles and the brain simultaneously. You start to feel the natural rhythm. Do it regularly, even for a few minutes, and your pronunciation improves without needing complex phonetic charts. And you sound more confident because you're comfortable producing established, natural sounding patterns.
Okay, daily listening, self-talk, shadowing chunks. What else defines these fluent learners' habits?
They tend to approach new information differently. They embody the curious learner mindset we touched on earlier. When they encounter a new word or phrase they don't understand, reading or listening.
They don't just skip over it and hope it wasn't important.
Exactly. They activate a quick learning cycle. They might quickly look it up on their phone, maybe jot it down in a note, and this is key. They often make a conscious effort to try and use that new word or phrase sometime in the next day or so. In their self-talk, maybe.
Why is that immediate use so important?
It helps cement it. It moves it from passive recognition to active recall potential. They treat each new piece of language like a little secret they've discovered, which keeps the whole process feeling engaging and fun rather than seeing every unknown word as proof of their inadequacy.
That curiosity fuels the learning engine. It makes you feel like you're constantly unlocking things, not constantly failing.
Precisely. And the accumulation of all those unlocked secrets over time is fluency.
Okay. And one last habit.
Natural review and assimilation. Fluent speakers don't generally rely on brute force memorization, like drilling flashcards for hours until their eyes glaze over. They understand, maybe intuitively, that the brain remembers things best through repeated exposure in different, meaningful contexts.
So it's like you hear a new phrase while shadowing today.
Mm-hmm.
Then maybe you try using it in your self-talk tomorrow morning.
Right.
Then you see it written in an online article a day later.
And then maybe you overhear someone use it in a YouTube video. It's that layering, that encountering the same word or chunk in various real-life situations that really makes it stick. It moves from fragile short-term memory into reliable long-term usage.
That makes so much sense. It explains why that consistent, daily, even short exposure is so much more effective than intense cramming. You're creating familiarity through repeated, varied context.
Exactly. It's about making the language familiar, almost commonplace in your mind, not just memorizing lists.
It really does all loop back to just showing up, every day, doing those small things. They seem simple individually, but together,
Wow.
they really do transform English from this external task into an internal natural tool for just living. Okay, so we got the mindset right. The daily habits are clicking into place. What does this actually look like, and maybe more importantly, sound like, when fluent people actually open their mouths to speak? Let's dig into how they communicate in that way that seems so natural and confident.
Right. And the first thing we absolutely have to do is bust a huge myth. It's pervasive.
Yeah.
The idea that fluent speakers always talk really, really fast.
Yeah, a lot of learners think speeding up makes them sound more fluent.
It's so counterproductive. In fact, it often makes them harder to understand and sound more nervous.
So what do fluent speakers do instead?
They prioritize clarity and expressiveness way above sheer speed. They have rhythm. That's a massive difference. Their speech isn't usually rushed or robotic. It's generally calmer, the words are connected smoothly, and it's expressive. They've naturally absorbed the prosody, the stress, the intonation, the music of the language.
That rhythm is key, isn't it? It makes them sound alive, engaged.
Totally. They use pauses effectively. They emphasize key words to convey meaning and emotion. You can have a fluent speaker who talks at a moderate, even relatively slow pace, but they sound incredibly articulate and easy to follow because they're focused on impact, not just word count per minute.
And we have to bring back the chunks idea here again,
Right.
in terms of actual speaking.
Absolutely. When they speak, they aren't usually translating word by laborious word from their native language. They are retrieving and deploying those established chunks, those groups of words or set phrases we talked about earlier.
So their speed doesn't come from talking faster necessarily.
No. The perceived speed or fluency often comes from how quickly and automatically they can access these preformed chunks from their memory, because they don't have to consciously construct every sentence grammatically from scratch.
The words just flow out more smoothly and instantly.
Exactly. And that reliance on chunks is precisely why those habits like imitation and shadowing are so effective. You're not just learning what the chunk means, you're practicing the physical act of saying the whole chunk smoothly with the right rhythm.
So when you need it in conversation, I'm really looking forward to it, comes out as one unit. Not, I am really looking forward.
Precisely. You've practiced the pattern, not just the individual words. Internalize enough of these patterns, and you dramatically reduce the cognitive load of speaking. You sound more confident because you're using language routines you've practiced and made your own.
Okay, so clarity over speed, using chunks. What else?
Another powerful technique, and this might surprise some learners, is their preference for simplicity. Fluent speakers, contrary to the stereotype, often favor short, clear sentences. Their main goal is communication, connection, not showing off complex vocabulary or grammar.
But don't learners often think fluency means using really big, impressive words?
They often do. They try to sound academic or sophisticated, maybe using words they just learned from a list, but they can end up sounding unnatural or getting tangled in grammar they haven't quite mastered yet. The sources consistently show that effective, fluent communicators prioritize being understood clearly and quickly.
So give me an example.
They'd almost always choose a simple, direct phrase like, I'm really happy, over something more complex and potentially stuffy, like, I find myself experiencing considerable delight.
Right. One sounds human, the other sounds like a textbook.
Exactly. The priority is making a connection, being efficient, being warm. They're not trying so hard to impress, which ironically makes them seem much more comfortable and confident.
And this leads into something else, the more human elements of speech, like fillers and pauses.
Yes. This is crucial. Trying to speak perfectly without any hesitation, any fillers, any pauses, it's not only impossible, it actually makes you sound weird, robotic, unnatural.
So things like, actually, uh, I mean, They're not always bad.
Not at all. When used naturally and in moderation, they're actually functional. They signal that you're thinking, processing, retrieving information. They make speech sound authentic, human. They buy you a split second of cognitive time.
The key is moderation, though, right? And why you're using them.
Absolutely. Fluent speakers might use a filler strategically when accessing a complex thought or searching for just the right word. It's different from someone nervously peppering every sentence with because they're frantically trying to translate basic ideas, and they also master the strategic
A
pause.
pause can be powerful.
Yeah.
I thought pauses meant you didn't know what to say.
A deliberate, well-placed pause is actually a sign of confidence and control. It gives your listener a moment to absorb what you just said, especially if it was complex. It makes you, the speaker, sound calm, thoughtful, composed. Rushing, on the other hand, signals anxiety. Clarity and composure always beat frantic speed.
Can you illustrate that difference?
Sure. Contrast someone stumbling nervously. I, well, I think that, maybe, versus someone pausing thoughtfully. I think that. Short pause. The situation really calls for a different approach. That second pause doesn't signal confusion. It signals consideration, confidence.
Got it. Okay, what's the final piece of sounding natural?
It's about how they engage in the conversation itself. They treat it like teamwork, not a solo performance or a test. This means they are active listeners, a skill many learners overlook because they're so busy worrying about what they're going to say next.
So they're not just waiting for their turn to talk.
No, they're genuinely listening, processing, and responding naturally. They use small reactive expressions, sometimes called back channeling.
Like what?
Little things like, oh, really? Mm-hmm. I see. Wow, that's interesting, or got it. These small interjections keep the conversation flowing smoothly. They show the other person you're engaged, you're following, you're comfortable in the exchange. You're a partner, not just a passive recipient waiting to transmit.
Those little signals prove you're actually present in the conversation. So confidence isn't about dominating, it's about participating comfortably.
Precisely. So, wrapping up the speaking techniques, they sound confident not because they're flawless, but because they trust themselves to communicate. They use clear, simple language, rely on practice chunks, employ natural rhythm and pauses, and actively participate in the give and take of conversation.
Okay, we've covered the mindset, the daily habits, the speaking techniques. But fluency is a marathon, not a sprint, right? How do these fluent folks handle the inevitable bumps in the road? The days they feel frustrated, the times they make a really obvious mistake in front of someone. And how on earth do they keep going for years? This feels like the secret sauce for long-term success.
It really is. This section is all about psychological endurance. And the absolute core secret when it comes to mistakes is simply the reaction, or maybe the lack of overreaction. Everyone makes mistakes. Everyone. Even highly proficient native speakers sometimes misspeak, use the wrong word, tangle up a sentence. The difference isn't if you make mistakes, it's how you respond when you do.
So fluent people,
Mm-hmm.
they just don't care.
It's not that they don't care about improving, but they see mistakes as completely normal, expected, and non-fatal parts of the process, instead of panicking, freezing, or getting visibly embarrassed.
They just keep talking.
Pretty much. They might quickly and gently correct themselves if they notice it, or they might just let it go and move on immediately. They've managed to replace that internal thought of, oh no, I failed, I sound stupid, with something more like, oops, wrong word. Okay, noted. I can fix that next time.
That reframing again, it changes everything, doesn't it?
Completely. Instead of cultivating shame or fear around errors, they cultivate curiosity. Why did I say that wrong? What's the right way? Curiosity keeps your brain open, receptive to learning. Fear and shame, they slam the door shut. Fluent learners understand, maybe implicitly, that mistakes are fundamental proof of effort.
What do you mean proof of effort?
You can only make mistakes in English if you are actually using English. If you're trying to communicate, trying to stretch beyond what's easy and comfortable. So, in a way, mistakes are evidence that you're in the game, you're active, you're growing. The sources had a great line. You can't improve something you never try. Silence, born of fear, is the only real failure.
And that links back to depersonalizing the error, right?
Yeah.
Separating the mistake from your identity.
Absolutely critical. They learn to mentally frame it as, that sentence wasn't quite right, not, I am terrible at English.
Why is that distinction so vital?
Because it protects your core confidence. Confidence, remember, isn't about never messing up. It's about having the resilience not to let those mess ups define you or stop you in your tracks. If you let one grammatical slip convince you that you're fundamentally incapable, you're far more likely to just give up.
And they handle self-correction differently, too.
Yes. It tends to be kind and natural, not overly critical. If they catch themselves saying, he got home, they might quickly follow up with a casual, oh, sorry, went home, he went home. It sounds confident because it shows they know the right way and can fix it. That ability to self-monitor and self-correct calmly is a huge sign of progress and self-awareness.
They also use reflection, don't they?
Mm.
But not in a self-flagellating way.
Exactly. After a conversation, they don't endlessly beat themselves up about every little error, but they might take a quiet moment later to think, okay, in that discussion about work, I struggled to express X point clearly. How could I have said that better? This kind of calm, constructive reflection helps consolidate learning without the pressure of performing in the moment.
Okay, handling mistakes is huge.
Yeah.
What about just staying motivated over the long haul? Months, years.
Right. Let's talk about lasting motivation, because fluent people understand a fundamental truth. Motivation is fickle. It's an emotion, and emotions come and go. You simply cannot feel inspired and energized to practice English every single day for years on end.
So they don't rely on feeling motivated.
They can't afford to. Instead, they rely on habits and established routines.
Back to the daily grind.
Exactly. They intentionally build these non-negotiable routines that keep them connected to English, even on days when their motivation is absolutely zero. Maybe the habit is just watching one 5-minute English news summary while brushing their teeth, or listening to an English podcast episode while doing the dishes. The habit ensures consistency regardless of how they feel that day.
But what drives the habit? Why bother sticking to it when you don't feel like it?
This is where understanding your personal why becomes absolutely crucial. Motivation waxes and wanes, but a strong sense of purpose endures. Fluent speakers or successful learners usually have a clear, compelling reason driving their efforts.
Like what?
It could be anything deeply meaningful to them. Maybe it's wanting to travel independently and connect with locals. Maybe it's collaborating effectively with international colleagues for career growth. Maybe it's being able to read books or research papers only available in English. Or maybe it's connecting with family members who speak English.
So if your purpose is strong enough,
Hmm.
say, I really want to understand my favorite musician's interviews without subtitles.
Then doing that 10 minutes of listening practice, even when you're tired and would rather just scroll social media, feels justified. It serves that bigger purpose.
Yeah.
Motivation is the weather. Purpose is the compass.
Love that. Weather versus compass. And they keep it enjoyable too, right?
Essential for longevity. They continue to consciously choose English content and activities they genuinely find interesting or fun. If you force yourself to read dry business reports when you actually love fantasy novels, you'll eventually quit. Read the fantasy novels in English. If you love cooking shows, watch them in English. That enjoyment factor makes the practice feel less like a chore and more like, well, just living your life.
And finally, how do they measure their progress? Because if you only focus on mistakes, it's demoralizing.
Right. They tend to measure progress in a healthier, more functional way. They don't only obsess about grammar accuracy percentages or scores on standardized tests, although those can be useful data points sometimes. They learn to notice the real-life improvements.
What kind of real-life things?
It's noticing those moments we talked about earlier, like, wow, I just understood that entire meeting without straining, or, hey, I managed to explain that complicated idea to my friend and they actually got it, or simply feeling less exhausted after speaking English for an hour than you used to.
Those functional wins, they feel more real, more meaningful than a test score sometimes.
They really do. They provide that internal validation that your efforts are paying off in the ways that actually matter to you. And celebrating those milestones keeps you going. And again, looking back, comparing your English today to how it was 6 months or a year ago, often reveals huge cumulative growth that you just didn't perceive day by day.
So they ultimately see learning not as a project with an end date.
Exactly. It becomes a lifestyle. They don't really think, okay, now I'm done learning English. They simply transition into being communicators who use English as part of their life, always curious, always picking up new things naturally, rather than being students who are constantly studying. That shift in identity might be the final, most powerful step towards true, sustainable fluency.
That brings us nicely to wrapping up. After this deep dive into the mindset, the daily habits, the speaking techniques, and that crucial resilience, the core message seems incredibly clear. Fluency isn't really about achieving perfection.
Not at all. It's about being relentlessly, maybe even boringly consistent. It's a habit you cultivate. Someone called it confidence in motion. I like that.
Confidence in motion. Yeah, it's like fluency is this relationship you build with the language integrated deeply into your life. It grows almost unnoticed, incrementally. Every single day, you just show up and use English to think, to connect, to do things.
Yeah. And the amazing thing is, the moment you stop chasing that impossible ghost of perfection and shift your focus to just communicating, connecting with another human being, getting your idea across, understanding them, your English naturally starts to flow much better.
It's often invisible progress, isn't it? You don't notice it day to day. Then one day you just realize, whoa, I understood that whole movie without subtitles. Or I just had a half-hour chat and didn't consciously translate a single thing in my head.
And that's the magic moment. You realize the transformation has happened. You've become fluent, not just in English, but maybe more importantly, fluent in trusting yourself, trusting that you can navigate communication, handle mistakes, and keep learning.
So if there's one single piece of advice, the biggest takeaway from everything you've looked at, what would it be?
It's almost frustratingly simple. Start today. Don't wait for the perfect moment, the right book, the best teacher. Just start. Do something small.
Like 5 minutes of listening, 90 seconds of self-talk while the kettle boils.
Exactly. Something manageable. And do it consistently. And please, please internalize this. Don't fear the mistakes. Fear the silence. Fear not trying. Because mistakes are not failures. They are your most effective teachers. They're the evidence you're brave enough to actually practice and push yourself.
Every single fluent speaker you admire, anyone you've ever heard who sounds effortless, has made literally thousands, probably tens of thousands of mistakes along the way.
Guaranteed. They just develop the resilience to not let those mistakes stop them from showing up again tomorrow. That's the real magic. Patience plus consistency.
So we'll leave you, the listener, with this thought to chew on. What one small, manageable, non-negotiable habit are you going to start today? What tiny action will become the cornerstone, the foundation of your long-term fluency journey?
Because making that one conscious choice and sticking to it, that's the beginning of living with English instead of constantly fighting against it.